What's up, party people? My name is Sunny Ray. This is the Sunny Ray Show. I think this will be our fifth interview for the day, and I've got a very special guest for my final guest for the day. His name is Matt Blumberg. He's a four-time tech CEO. He's currently running a company called MarkupAI. He's been founding and running technology companies now for roughly 30 years, and the through line across all of them is infrastructure for trust. He's the author of a blog and 3 books on scaling startups: StartupCEO, StartupCXO, and Startup Board. So I'm going to be bringing on Matt. Matt, how you doing, bud?
All right, I'm good, Sonny. Good to see you.
Yeah, likewise. Home stretch, almost weekend. You got any big plans or what?
It's Friday. It's 3:45. Here we
Feeling
go.
good. Looking good. Good. Matt, so where are you calling in from today? Where are you based? I forget.
I'm just outside New York City, and frequently in New York City, but not in today.
Guess where I'm going to be on Thursday? New York City.
Not Toronto is my guess.
Not Toronto. I'm in Toronto now, but I'm actually taking my little ones and my family to New York the first time.
Fun.
Like, I've been there many times, but I've never actually taken the little ones. I'm super excited about it because I've been wanting to do so for some time.
That is great. Well, here's one thing that should be on your list. Get them a frozen hot chocolate at Serendipity on the Upper East Side.
Frozen hot chocolate. I'm running it down on Serendipity. Yes, I'm looking for tips, by the way.
Help change their lives.
Change their lives, Matt. Stop. Oh my goodness. You're getting me excited, bud. Matt, what is MarkupAI? What are you building? High level, short for now, but we'll go deeper into it later on.
Yeah, MarkupAI, we call ourselves Content Guardian Agents. We are a multi-agent, multi-surface platform to help companies safely scale their use of AI for content production. So the way to think about us and kind of how we fit into the universe is, companies are spending a ton of money on AI for coding assistance. There's a lot of tooling and infrastructure around that to make it work well. Companies have been doing that for a few years. They're now starting to turn their attention to using AI for kind of industrial strength content production. And that infrastructure is not well developed. So what a lot of companies are finding is they've turned all their writers into editors because they keep getting stuff back from Claude or Chat or Gemini that's like, it's okay, but it's not great. So we are tooling an infrastructure for AI for content. And we help a company define the standards that they care about for their content, whether it's brand, legal and regulatory, search visibility, or accuracy. And then we make sure their content meets all those standards with good scaling, scoring, human in the loop kickouts, and a big trust factor so that they are comfortable pushing the publish button.
Interesting. Cool, Matt. So I'm happy to, again, like I said, go deeper into it. But let's start maybe with a little bit about your background. I was reading about it yourself. You spent 20 years at Return Path, deciding in effect whether a piece of email was trustworthy. MarkupAI decides whether a piece of content is trustworthy. Is that the same company at a different layer, or do you resist that reading?
It couldn't be more different. There are certain through lines in my career, and you've hit on one of them, which is trust. And Markup is about trusting AI and trusting content. Return Path was about trusting email through, I would say, really through data. There was a company in between those two called Bolster, which was about adding trust to the recruiting and executive recruiting process through transparency. And I would also say that there's a real through line in my career around culture and creating a high performing workplace by building a really trusting relationship between the company and senior management and employees. So you could probably find some other through lines in my career, but I would say trust and transparency are pretty high up there.
And, Return Path was reputation infrastructure that most end users never even saw. So do you deliberately gravitate towards like invisible infrastructure businesses? And what is that choice, I guess, like cost commercially.
I don't, and I would say of the 4 companies, like 2 of them were more invisible, and 2 of them were very visible. So that's sometimes B2B or B2B infrastructure companies are great businesses to build, and they sort of touch consumers in ways that consumers never realize.
Mm.
Nothing wrong with that, but I also worked in my early career for a company called MoviePhone. 777 Film, which was a popular B2C service that millions and millions of people used every day to find movie showtimes and buy tickets, and everybody knew that brand. So there's no magic to whether something is behind the scenes or out in front.
Mm. Mm. And you've also written that founders should ask, if we're starting this company today, how would AI define our business? So when you ran that question against your own kind of back catalog, what did it tell you about, I guess, what you're building now?
Well, the interesting thing is what we're building now at MarkupAI is a new platform. In many ways, we're a native AI startup, but we're actually pivoting a legacy software business as well. In fact, when I got to the company, it had a different name. It was just a natural language processing stack, and some really good client relationships and deep knowledge of how enterprise content production works. And our charge, myself and the team, was to reinvent the business as a contemporary AI business. So the first question we did have to ask ourselves was, if we were starting this business from scratch today, how would we do it differently? And then we did it. And it's in some ways, it's much harder to orchestrate a turnaround or a full-scale pivot of a business than it is to start something from scratch. And I've spent a bunch of time kind of mentoring other CEOs and founders on that point. And if you sort of go back to your Clay Christensen and your innovator's dilemma, the way legacy companies get killed is from like a fast-moving, nimble startup with a good enough solution for the low end of the market that starts to nibble away at the bottom of the business. And big businesses are usually really dismissive of those things. And by the time they stop dismissing them, it's too late. And what we've had to do here is do that to ourselves. And that is what every legacy business has to do to itself right now, because otherwise there's a 10-person AI team out there that's just going to clock you.
Believe it. Matt, you've also said that top mistakes in scaling are usually people mistakes, not product ones. Which specific scaling mistake from your own history do you now design against on day one?
And I've made so many of them over time. There's like a library to pick from. But if I have to sort of think about it from the beginning and sort of designing it in, I would say that it's easy when you are an early stage startup to think you're ready to scale before you are, and you can add the wrong people at the wrong time as a result of that, and that can be really costly mistakes. So one of the things that early stage CEOs come to me for advice on, or used to come to us at Bolster when we were doing executive search, would be, it'd be someone saying like, oh, I just reached the $1 million ARR mark. I got to hire a CRO. And that's sort of the classic one. And I'd be like, well, actually, no, that's not what you need. Like, who did all the sales up till this point? And the founder will say, well, I did. I'll say, great. Actually, what you need is a really good sales rep. Or maybe you need a sales manager because you have one junior person and you need someone to organize it. But you really don't need a CRO, because the CRO has to come with a ton of infrastructure. So it's sort of, I think it's easy to get yourself 3 steps ahead sometimes instead of being 1 step ahead. And you have to be 1 step ahead, but it's really painful to be 3 steps ahead. You spend a lot of money and time recruiting someone, and then they come in, and this will date me a little bit, but at a company I worked at in the mid-90s, MoviePhone, they hired a really, really, really super senior chief marketing officer. And he showed up on the first day and he said, "Where's the typing pool?" Now, obviously, typing pools are a relic of the past, but this was the past. And everyone looked at him like, well, this is a startup. Like, we all type our own stuff. And the industrial strength CMO was the person that was used to big infrastructure surrounding him. And the company was just a big mismatch between what the company needed and that. And, what the company could have used a few hours of his time as a consultant. But that's probably one of the biggest traps I see early stage people fall into. And I've certainly been mindful of that myself in designing things here. Again, this is a little bit of an unusual situation here because it is a turnaround. So we have a business already. It's not like we're a raw startup, but that's a difficult one.
Yeah, that really resonates. Cool. So, between selling Return Path in 2019 and starting MarkupAI, what changed in what you personally wanted out of a company, and how did that kind of like reshape what you chose to build?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing when I was thinking about something new at the end of 2024 was AI, and I was really excited about the possibilities of what you could do with the tooling. I had started to use it a lot personally. It's obvious, and now, a year and a half later, it's even more obvious that it's the future. So the thing that I was most excited about doing was building something in AI. When I found this company, what I was really drawn to is that it was an existing business that was AI adjacent with a lot of revenue and a lot of really marquee customers, sort of crying out for a more contemporary solution. So we've been able here to have all of the fun of building an AI startup with an established base of customers that give us great feedback and input on products, and are, now that our new product is launched, are starting to migrate over to it.
That's amazing. What was the specific moment that you decided, content governance was a company and not just like a feature?
Well, that was kind of the legacy business. So that's one of the proof points for me was I knew it was a business. I knew Fortune 500 companies were paying 6 and 7 figures a year for it. And it was a problem that AI had made worse without necessarily solving. So the concept that I talked about a couple of minutes ago, that sort of content is the next code, and there needs to be a real kind of infrastructure layer under it for it to work well for medium and large enterprises. That was pretty clear a couple of years ago, and this company had a head start, and that's why we're excited to be here and doing what we're doing.
And Matt, you draw a hard line between AI native and AI bolted on, right? So what's the concrete kind of architectural test that you apply to tell the two apart?
Yeah, maybe one of those things. Well, no, it's probably, I was going to say it's one of those things, it when you see it, but it's really not. I mean, the number of SaaS companies out there who have said, "Ooh, we're an AI company now," and you look into it, and what they are is a SaaS company where they've added a little agent this or a little chatbot that. It's not actually an AI company. That doesn't mean they're doing anything wrong, but they're misclassifying themselves to try to get hype or make investors happy or juice a multiple or something like that. And one of the things that I think we've learned here in this business is that when you build something from scratch that is native AI, it just functions differently. You care about different things than retrofitting AI into an existing application or workflow. That's probably true of any technology disruption ever. So it doesn't mean that the hybrid solution is bad, but you just have to recognize it for what it is, which is a hybrid solution.
And in a world of infinite AI generated content, trust is the most valuable asset, right? So what convinced you of that, and what would have to happen for it to turn out wrong?
Well, I mean, what convinced me of that, quite frankly, was using AI a lot myself. And I mean, the power of the and speed of output is head spinning, and the quality of the output is good, not great. And I think everyone's had that experience, right? Where you ask AI a question, you get back an answer, and it's got some mistakes in it, or it doesn't sound quite right. Or you ask it to draft something, but you can't use it because it doesn't sound like you. It sounds like Claude wrote it. And what that means is that you lose the power of large language model production and speed because everything that comes out, you have to like scrutinize. And so all the time value that you get out of not creating it, you now have to edit it. And I sometimes think sometimes editing is easier than creating. It depends how perfect you want the output to be. If the output needs to be perfect, and if you're writing for a company, if you're writing for a corporate website, the output needs to be pretty darn close to perfect. Then editing it becomes almost as hard as writing it. So that's where we decided we would, sort of fit in the into the world of enterprise content flows or enterprise workflows. If we can make the job of editing as simple as the job of writing, then companies can really unlock the power of AI for content.
Yeah, that makes that resonate. So,
and trust, because you're coming back to the theme for a second. Here's where trust fits into it, right? If you're a company and you publish something and it's kind of wrong, like what happens? Trust is one of those things, like they say, it takes like years to build and minutes to destroy. And like you think about it, no matter what kind of company you are, you can't afford for your content to be obviously wrong. You can't afford to look dumb because you're using the wrong word all over the place. You can't afford to sound like Claude. And everyone knows what that sounds like now.
Yeah. Yep. So, you said that the speed of learning is the greatest competitive advantage, and that static roadmaps are now essentially a liability. Practically, like what did you have to break in how a company plans in order to actually operate that way?
Well, we're still in the middle of figuring that out and breaking it and rebuilding it. But but I can tell you a little bit of how I'm thinking about it. For the history of software and maybe other things, but for years, decades, the constraint in a company has been engineering, software development, right? Production of high quality code. And because AI coding assistants are the most used and most mature part of the AI ecosystem, that constraint is no longer the constraint. If you think about what that changes for your workflow as a company, it's really dramatic. In a world where the go-to-market side of the business is running 2 to 8 quarters ahead of the product side of the business, because they're out there in the market, they hear needs, they spot trends, they serve them up, and then product says, great, we'll put it in the backlog, we'll schedule it in 2 quarters. We'll get to it next year. That's just the rhythm that business has been in for years, because the constraint was how many engineers do you have? How fast can you build product? When you remove that constraint, you actually move the constraint somewhere else in the system. So what I would say becomes the hard part is figuring out what to build quickly, and then figuring out how to get it into the hands of your sales team or your customers quickly without confusing them or exhausting them. And I mean, I'll give you an example that anyone who runs an AI company or software company has seen. You can be on a call with a prospect and you can come back to the office afterwards and say, ooh, prospect X wanted feature Y. And then one of your developers goes and builds it that afternoon and then deploys it. So that never would have happened 5 years ago, right? It would have gone into a backlog, and then someday it would have been groomed out of the backlog and put into a Scrum and a sprint, and then it would have been developed, et cetera, et cetera. But now when the feature can get built in an afternoon, you have all sorts of problems and challenges that come from that. One, is it really the right feature, or is it just that one client said something offhand in a call? Two, do you already have some functionality that's sitting somewhere else that's a little bit like that, and now you've created something overlapping? Three, how do you train a sales force on something that was built yesterday? Four, how do you put it in market without having customers be confused? Like what, or if you just put something in market yesterday and another thing today and another thing tomorrow, we're exhausted. So I think software companies are going to need to be re-engineered over time. And that's what we're spending some cycles on now. Obviously, our most important cycles are on getting great product into the hands of our customers, but we are trying to be really thoughtful about how we do that as well.
That's super interesting. I was gonna say, can you like what is the decision at MarkupAI that you guys got wrong and reversed, and what did that reversal cost you guys internally?
That's a good question. I mean, I haven't been here a long time, but there was one. So we took a very, very quick and dirty first approach to building our new platform. And our theory was that our customer was going to be the software developer. And the internal software developer, right? The person that the content teams were saying, hey, can you build this for me? Can you help me with this? So V1 of our solution was really just delivered by API and designed to be consumed by software developers. And we had a whole DevRel motion that we were working on. And it just turned out not to be right. It wasn't wasted work. It was good learning and it was quick, which is what the benefit is of working with coding assistants and in the contemporary environment. I don't know if it cost us all that much, but it cost us a little bit of time. That produced some really good learnings that had us say like, oh no, our ICP is, we need to be tech friendly because we're a tech product, but we're not a developer purchased product. We're going to be a content team purchased product, whether it's a marketing team or a technical documentation or knowledge-based team, like that's the customer. And then we also have to make it really easy to implement.
Got it. Can you walk me through what a content guardian agent actually does inside of a large enterprise on like let's say a Tuesday morning? And what is it catching that a human reviewer misses?
Yeah, I mean, content guardian agents and our whole engine really does one thing. It does lots of flavors of one thing, which is rapidly evaluate large bodies of content against a fixed pool of rules or standards. So there are things you can build as a skill in Claude or as a really detailed prompt that do that as well, but that doesn't work at scale for an enterprise with administrative needs and privileges and permissions on rule sets and who controls the rules and how does the same rule get used by everybody and all the things that make enterprise software a thing. But yeah, what a content guardian agent does is it looks at your content, it looks at rules, and it makes sure the content conforms to the rules. And where it doesn't, it will either fix it if it's a low stakes issue or flag it for you, the user, if it's a high stakes issue. So different flavors of that are all kind of under the hood would be things like your company's brand voice. Are you writing something that sounds like you or not? Your company's terminology or glossary. Large companies can have hundreds of thousands of terms in a terminology dictionary. Terms that have been deprecated, product family names that have been changed over time. Oh, this one has a capital letter in the middle of it, and this one doesn't. And when we're talking to a British audience, we write the word this way as opposed to a US audience where we write it that way. The rule sets can be very complex around brand. A second thing the rule set can be complex around is regulation, right? You have to substantiate your claims, or if you're in the medical device field, these are things you can't do or can do. If you're banking in France, what are the consumer protection laws you have to pay attention to? Another vector on it could be AI search visibility. Like there are a bunch of rules about SEO, first of all, and now about AEO and GEO. And you want to make sure that the content you write is easy to be found by Google and by Gemini and by Perplexity and by Claude and by ChatGPT. And then finally, accuracy is a huge issue. When you're thinking about accuracy, it's actually complex but simple at the same time to define a source of truth for a particular topic at a company. So, for example, maybe you're a pharmaceutical company and your marketing team is working on marketing copy for a new drug. You got to make sure that marketing copy conforms to the specifications of the drug. The specifications of the drug could be thousands of documents or thousands of pages of documents in multiple repositories across multiple locations. So that's the complexity in it, is kind of defining what it is and where it is. And then making sure that someone who's writing a blog post isn't going to be able to look all that stuff up. You can't put all that stuff in a context window. But you need to have something that checks against it and flags it if it's a problem. And then when you put all of it together, you really need a multi-agent orchestration approach to it. So that's sort of that's the game we're in.
And then Matt, you also went API first and MCP powered rather than building a destination app. Why is
Yeah.
that the right shape? And what do you give up by never owning the user screen?
Yeah, well, there's some times where we own little pieces of the user screen, but our philosophy is that we need to live where content lives. So, when you tell people that they need a whole new workflow, you might get there, you might not get there. We're not designed as a system of record. Companies have systems of record for their content, right? They're repositories like a DAM or SharePoint or Google Drive. They're CMSs and CCMSs. They're PIMs. There are lots of places the content lives. And people author content in lots of places. They author it in Google Docs. They author it in Word, in Figma, in in PowerPoint, and slides, in GitHub, like you name it, right? So our philosophy was we want to make it really easy to use us because we want to be where content is. So we have what we call a multi-surface approach. So API, MCP, and Chrome extension. And then we do some other bespoke integrations for applications that are a little quirky for a Chrome extension, something like a Figma or a PowerPoint desktop or something like that. But it was really important to us to have an administrative dashboard. So, the owner of the account needs to be able to set it up and put rules in and link to repositories and whatnot. But for users' experience, to be as simple as, oh, I create my content in Claude, so I'm going to one-click connect to MarkupAI's MCP server. I'm going to download a skill, drop it in. Here's what I put in the project instructions. Now everything is checked automatically on the way out the door. Or if you think about the API, sort of batch checking approach to things, we have clients that go through rebrands all the time. You go through a rebrand, you think the hard part is figuring out what the new brand is. No, the hard part is retrofitting the last 10 years of your content to the new brand. So you're not constantly living in this world of like, oh yeah, what about that blog post? Or, oh, what about that web page? That's still got the old color on it. It still has the old color, the old tone and voice, the legacy wording of things. What if you could push a button and have an API scan 6 million pages of content and fix everything for you to bring it to your new standards? So that's sort of been our approach. Like we want to live where content lives, so we're easy as possible to work with.
Makes a lot of sense. Content governance is one instance of a kind of bigger question, right? So who verifies machine output at scale? Like how far beyond text does that problem and this company eventually go?
Well, the problem eventually is going to get, multimodal. It probably already is multimodal. Look, there are certainly some areas where verifying the accuracy and authenticity of video is already a way bigger problem. That's a little bit of a different problem. That's not really a problem that is a big corporate problem at the moment. But eventually everything we do is going to have to, be multimodal like that. And we're starting some of our first work on agents now that are dealing with images and not just text. Eventually we'll have to go to video and who knows what else.
And regulated industries were the kind of the strongest early pull, right? So does compliance end up being the wedge that gets you in, or is it like a brand voice, the thing that people actually pay to protect?
Yeah, it really depends who you're talking to in the enterprise. Compliance can be a wedge. Brand voice can be a wedge. Accuracy is something everybody is focused on. And AEO and GEO, kind of AI search, discovery, and visibility is another important wedge. So, I've always liked for all my businesses to have lots of entry points because you never know what hot button you're going to hit for somebody at any given moment in time. Yeah, but our customer generally, our user is the writer and editor. It's not really the lawyer. We are not a solution for lawyers. So compliance is useful because the people who write content don't want to get in trouble with compliance, and they want to have a good relationship with them and not constantly serve stuff up that's a problem. But that's different than producing a tool for lawyers. We're not Harvey. We're not co-counsel, case text. We don't need to be, but we need to be lawyer friendly. There are certainly clients we have where someone from compliance is a stakeholder in the sale. And we've had to architect some aspects of our system and those compliance agents to meet the needs of those users as well.
So Matt, you guys raised what, like 27.5 million, right? Into essentially a category where Writer, Jasper, Grammarly, and Adobe all claim adjacent ground. So what's the thing you can do that none of them can copy in, let's say, a quarter?
Yeah, I mean, we are focused on something that I would argue none of them are focused on. Um, a couple of them do some pieces of it. Grammarly used to do a lot more of it, but if you think about, I mean, you gave me a wide range of companies there. So Writer and Jasper are focused on sort of content creation. They are there to displace your large language model. I I'm not a believer in that. I think there are plenty of large language models out there. And quite frankly, I think most companies are going to use a range of them. They're never going to standardize on one of them. And I, for one, would not want to go out and compete with Anthropic and Google and Microsoft and OpenAI every day. So their eye is going to be on a different ball. Adobe's, by the way, all these are great companies. No knock on them at all. They're just not specialists in the thing that we do. So Adobe also, great company. They're really a system of record, Creative Cloud, digital experience, sites, guides, Workfront. I mean, all that, they want to own where your content lives and how your content gets published. And obviously Creative Cloud there is kind of a whole separate business. So we're a nice fit into that. We're a nice add-on to an LLM or to a production business like a Writer or a Jasper. Grammarly is an interesting one because that's now a completely different company now that it's sort of Superhuman plus Coda plus Grammarly. I think they have an ambitious project in front of themselves as well, which, as far as I can tell, is to build the third great Office suite behind Google and Microsoft. But none of those things are really about the importance of fine tuning and having trust in content from kind of an independent source. So look, anyone who's ever used a large language model, it's wrong, and you tell it it's wrong, and what does it say? You're absolutely right, Sonny. I didn't think about that. I made this mistake, but you have to call it out on its own mistake for it to do that. And when you're using a system like ours that's built around your standards and determinism, it does that work for you. And that's where the bottleneck is going to move in content.
Interesting. So Matt, I guess help me land the plane with this one. So it's 10 years out, right? Does content governance become a standing enterprise function with a budget and an owner, or does it get absorbed into the models themselves?
10 years is a long time from now. It already is a line item in lots of companies because we got lots of companies paying us for it. 10 years from now, I couldn't even begin to. Yeah.
Who knows? Yeah. Well, Matt, man, if
you find out from one of your other guests, please let me know.
Yeah. Well, Matt, I learned a lot from you. You're like a stud of an entrepreneur. You've done this many times. You're doing it again, and it's nice to have guys like you out in the battlefield. Matt, where do people learn more about you in terms of is it LinkedIn, Twitter? Where are you posting your thoughts, and also maybe with the company as well? What's the domain?
Yeah, sure. So the company is MarkupAI, and if you sign up, we start with a free trial, no matter what size company you are. And MarkupAI/Matt is the way to get there, and note that I got you there. My blog is StartupCEO.com, and LinkedIn, I'm Matt Blumberg. I'm pretty easy to find. I've been doing this for a long time, so. But yeah, be happy to connect with anyone and riff with anyone about these issues.
Awesome. Sounds good, Matt. I'm going to bring this one to an end. And thank you all for tuning in. Appreciate it. Until next time. Cheers.
Thanks, Sonny.
Matt, just hang out for 1 minute. I'm going to bring this